Tonight's top stories. The virus death toll is set to pass 5,000 in the next few hours. And another hard day in the world of finance as shares continue to plunge. Well, you thought we'd never see the day where we'd be doing coverage on anything other than what we usually do here at Force 13. The decision hasn't been taken lightly, but we are also covering the latest information about what is a global pandemic around the world. What we're going to be starting to do every evening at this point, around midnight UTC, is updates with the latest news from around the world on this pandemic, the coronavirus, COVID-19, whatever you want to call it, and charting its progress really and making sure everyone is informed as much as possible. We took this decision because it is such a large event. It is probably, whether rightly or wrongly, it's made the biggest impact in the news circuit really over any other news event, certainly any other natural disaster. Approximately 10 times bigger than Hurricane Dorian, which we covered last year, of course, and our well-known coverage on that. So there's a lot to talk about tonight. Obviously, all around the world, huge stories. My name's Nathan Foy. I'm joined by our team as ever. And of course, you can comment on our stream live on the chat section. A little bit different than normal in the WeatherBeat format here on Force 13 Live. And I'm joined by several people tonight, consisting of Strat, David, Parker, and Thomas. Good evening to you all.
Evening, Nathan. We're live streaming Facebook.
Indeed, we are also on Facebook tonight as well. This is the WHO, the WHO, the World Health Organization, their latest chart. We've got some of our own as well, which we'll show you in the near future. But here is where we're at right now. The amount of cases in Italy in particular is something that I've been looking at today, rising by over 2,600. Those cases are rising still quicker by each day. Now that may be something to do with the reporting, maybe that's been slowed down due to the lockdown there in Italy, but there are so many stories from all around the world. In the United States, of course, as some of our members will probably talk about shortly, major sporting events have been suspended across the country pretty much. New York City under a state of emergency, and they're barring many public events. A lot of states now putting into effect restrictions on crowds of over generally about 500. Some countries, I think Holland, the Netherlands, they're restricting numbers above 100. But as you can see on the map, there are cases dotted all around the world at this point. I think it's something like 125 different countries now that have confirmed cases. And you can see just how large those dots are. Still China, obviously, much the largest, with just over 80,000 cases and nearly 4,000 deaths, I think it is. Italy with 1,000 of its own, reaching that mark earlier today, or in the last 24 hours. The actual death toll will probably reach 5,000 in a matter of hours. And that will probably increase substantially further yet as well. So with analysis and thoughts from the team, I don't know who would like to begin. I guess we'll first talk to David. He's on the eastern coast of Australia, and your perspective on what's going on and what's actually going on in your area right now, David.
It is a developing news item. The federal government has responded. The Prime Minister did an address to the nation last night, but sadly, the lack of information was visible. However, the federal government is to spend $22 billion on this issue. There is major concern about the country sliding into recession, but the panic is really at the front, and we have over 3,000 cases here in Queensland. Actually, 3,000 people
3,000?
1,000?
Yep, 3,000 in self-isolation.
Okay, so that's not confirmed cases, but people who are taking precautions.
31 cases.
All right, yeah. So there's a lot of precautions that are being taken right now around the world, obviously. A lot of these, I think it should be stressed that a lot of the drastic actions that are being taken in some places are really precautionary to prevent any further spread, really. Interestingly, one or two countries, including here in the UK, not quite really going for that yet, as you're going to see very shortly on our little package. But obviously many other countries taking it seriously, some more than others. Of course, the United States banning travel from European countries. We'll have some more on that shortly, but now a roundup of the facts as we know them right now in some of our leading countries. This is the latest. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson calls it the worst public health crisis for a generation, but sweeping measures aren't being put into effect in the United Kingdom just yet. The government advises those with a cough or fever to self-isolate for 7 days. A state of emergency has been declared in New York City as all major sport is cancelled in the United States. Many states now putting in restrictions on large gatherings. President Trump said we had to move quickly to impose the EU travel ban, which comes into effect on Friday. Italy remains the worst affected country outside of China, with 15,000 cases so far and now over 1,000 deaths. The country still on lockdown, and the number of cases per day is still increasing, with over 2,500 on March the 12th. Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte said that China is willing to help the Philippines if necessary, after meeting the President Xi Jinping. Metro Manila is still closed due to the virus. We will continue to run regular updates on this feature. Send us a message on social media if you wish to be involved in our coverage or to join us on our panel nightly. Send us a message through Facebook, Twitter, or our contact email address, contact@force13.com. So this is indeed our special coverage on the latest on the coronavirus as we get it here. Oh, there it goes again. We'll stop that one. Forgot about that. That's our next trail. This is Force 13 Live with the latest on that. Where were we going to go next? Well, let's talk to some of our friends in the US as well. Of course, the stocks have really been struggling today. I think Strat knows all about that one. You've got your finger on the pulse on that.
Yeah, I can actually get some information up here for people that want it, just to actually with some charting information and stuff momentarily. This was the worst individual day on the United States stock market since 1987. It's the worst day since then.
Yeah, that's the case here in the UK as well.
Yep, 1987 was a gigantic flash crash triggered by a numerous amount of things. Today was much more rhythmic. Honestly, it could have ended up being way worse than it was as well. Here's the chart. I just pulled it all up, took all the details off for you guys to take a look at. This is just an application I use. Basically, we had the after yesterday's bloodbath that took us back to bad levels after Monday's terrible day, which was at that time the worst day since the 2008 financial crisis. The travel ban last night, along with all the developing things in America, had at least our economic system realized that things really might not be going back to the norm in terms of a lot of social isolation that's going to be ongoing, and there's definitely concerns with that on economic impacts on that front. After Trump's speech of the travel ban, though, the global markets reacted wildly, dropping down almost 5% in America, multitudes of percentages elsewhere. I know Brazil in particular has been getting hit very hard in terms of percentage losses. Today, and I'll just give an example of how extreme things happened today, just by zooming in here. We opened down over 5%, and we dropped so quickly that the market had to be halted. We hit a circuit breaker halt level, which triggers to try to stop panic selling on the market. So there's 3 different levels. There's at 7% down, 13% down, and 20% down. We hit that level for the second time this week, which is absolutely extraordinary. And then after that unhalt, there was more panic selling that drove us down.
This is
to
what you would
very little
expect,
levels.
though, given the drastic measures that are being taken all around the world right now.
Oh, you absolutely may. And we saw this huge broke. We broke below 2,500 on the S&P index, which is a huge historical support point. A 500 number, just that in itself is a big mental support and then a technical support level as well. If you're just talking about holding up the market, and we kind of traded in this range, trending down for the most part after that first unhalt until about 12:45 ish, when the Federal Reserve announced that they were going to inject over 1.5 or about 1.5 trillion dollars into the markets and into short-term repo markets, which is short-term lending to banks to create liquidity in the markets. The market went up 5% plus in under 20 minutes, which is something I've never seen before in terms of sheer reaction. It was extraordinary. You can see this huge midday bounce
We're
up.
going to get things like that when it's so volatile out there.
You will. The volatility has been off the charts. I think it's 14 straight days now where the market's moved at least 3% within a range from one day to the next, or intraday range. It's been absurd to watch, really. And then from this point where we peaked out, we were down over like 3% on the day from being down over 8%. People, I think, really started to realize, at least if you're talking about market sentiment, that just injecting money into the system to short-term hold prices up won't actually do anything for the economy if the underlying problem, which in this case is the coronavirus, isn't actually solved. And we saw an absolutely massive sell-off to the end of the day. Went from a peak of over 2,660 on the S&P index down to 2,478. So we sold off like almost 7% in the last 2.5 hours of the day, or just under 3 hours of the day. The last 5 minutes even were particularly harsh.
Yeah, they were. We're going to pick up more on that later on as well. We want to add as much balance as we can, really. We need to talk more about what's actually happening in real terms, in how, what is the infection rate like over in these different parts of the US. We've got Strat over there in the northeast. We've also got Parker and Thomas in the more central part of the US. So starting with you, Strat, and then moving along, what's the current situation out there right now?
Well, I can give you a local perspective as a college student. Most colleges and universities are canceling classes and moving online and making us have to not be on campus anymore within the next 5 to 6 days, which is creating absolute chaos because many of us are on spring break and we have to go back to our university still to get all of our belongings and remove them. It's a smart precautionary measure, but many universities jumped on this train today, like my university did, rather than Tuesday.
There were already a few that were doing that, weren't they?
There were a few, but it's most of them now. I think the analogy I heard from an official was that dorms are worse than cruise ships. And
really?
Considering how easily people get sick normally during regular semesters, I'm very inclined to agree with that statement. Students are going through a hectic process. As much as for my hometown, where I'm going to be staying now indefinitely, I personally do not anticipate being able to return to my college the rest of the semester. Our public schools in my town are also closed indefinitely because of numerous students being in direct contact with a presumptive positive case. So public schools are shut down in my town as well. And I can say at least internationally, because I'm actually in Mexico right now as well, there's not as much concern here yet. It's been pretty light here. But
very
locally
few
back in the
in
Northeast,
Mexico
there's
so
starting
far.
to be significant concerns coming up. Right by my university, there's been an explosion of cases recently.
All right. Let's talk to Parker. I think this is the US map that you're showing us.
Yes, it is.
Well, it obviously is, but I'm just wondering if it's Parker showing us that. Yep.
Yes, it is. From the CDC, as you see, the total cases so far that are positive is currently 1,215. This is as of 8 hours ago, and total deaths are 36. As you see, the only states that have not received any positive cases yet would be Idaho, Wyoming, North Dakota, Mississippi, Alabama, West Virginia, and of course Maine and Alaska. So those are the states that have not tested for any positive cases yet, but as of now, that could have changed by now. But as of 8 hours ago, there are no cases in any of those. Rest of the states, as you see, particularly states like Washington, California, even New York, and some of the more populated states that have bigger cities, their cases are starting to rise significantly. These showing from the past couple of hours, especially from the
Okay.
CDC. Anyways, going next on to I guess my state as of right now. As you see, there are currently 12 positive cases in Indiana, 64 tests in total, but there are 0 deaths. This is a little reference map in case anyone doesn't know. So there's 1 case in Elkhart, 1 case in Allen, 1 case in Adams, 1 case in Noble, 1 case in Marion, 1 case in Johnson, 1
Mm-hmm.
case in Hancock, 1 case in Howard, and 1 case
Dotted around the
in
place, really.
yes, pretty much. And that is actually could be changing very soon as one of my father is a nurse and his friend is also a nurse, and they are currently testing 2 new patients up in Wabash. So as that is continuing along, in Indiana Governor Holcomb has limited gatherings to 250 people due to the coronavirus in Indiana. So a lot of sports meetings have been canceled. Pretty much show choir and all that other stuff has been canceled in Indiana. Schools, universities are shutting down. Ball State University shut down, went to online learning.
All right.
Surprisingly, some Marion University in Marion County is still going to in-person classes, which is surprising as they were the first county in Indiana to have their first case. So, but as of right now, that's the situation in Indiana, and
Sure.
you can take it away.
Yep. If you want to let us know what's going on in your neck of the woods, do send us a message either through the chat feature or when we're not on the air, you can send a message through email contact@force13.com. Thomas, over to you in Missouri there. What's the situation with you?
So, situation over in Missouri, we have 2 confirmed cases now. So we have 1 in St. Louis County, right in my neck of the woods, and we have another one that was just confirmed today down in Springfield. I do have some stuff on my screen share as well that could be of use
Yep, we got
potentially. And so this is the United States as a whole. So we have 1,715 cases as a whole in the United States right now. And we have 41 deaths. We have 30 people that have recovered so far. Ignore these rates over here. The death rate in the United States is not 58%. We do have 1,634 people in mild condition and only 1% in critical. So when it's all
Okay.
said and done, death rate's probably going to be more around 1 to 2% in the United States. Something that is of concern for those in the United States when it comes to the future is if we take a look at this on a linear scale, we could see things going up slowly. We see things are just spiking right now in the United States, and this spike is expected to continue for quite a while. We will likely, I think, within the next couple of weeks, be over 10,000 cases. And if we look at this from a logarithmic scale, we've gone pretty linearly up logarithmically, which means that, again, within the next couple of weeks, we'll 10,000, and then a couple of weeks after that, 100,000, presumably a couple of weeks after that, 1,000,000. So within the next month and a half to 2 months, we could be at over 1,000,000 cases. The biggest problem right now with the current case numbers is the United States government does not have enough test kits. So what's going on is we don't have enough kits to really get an accurate number on the total number of cases around the nation. The United States government is saying that we need to wait at least 2 weeks before we can get accurate numbers, because by then they're saying they should have enough test kits. But a lot of people are speculating that the number of cases in the United States is a whole lot higher than
Yeah,
what's
we've seen
currently
some of
being
that
stated.
Yeah.
today, haven't we?
Yeah. And I just
Certainly.
want to butt in really quick just to add on to that, because that assumption could be true. You know, if you go onto social media right now, you can make a pretty easy search and find a lot of personal stories of people that haven't been able to get a COVID-19 test because of a lack of not either a lack of availability of a test or a lack of guidelines restrictions. The restrictions will be too tight so that even if you may have a community transmission case, you won't be able to get tested unless you were in one of the few high-level countries that the U.S. classified recently as China, Iran, and Italy were the three main ones, and South Korea. The fact that the guidelines are so strict were to kind of make a fit in for the lack of overall test kits, so that they could try to get as many direct positive cases out of the test kits that they have. You know, they don't really want to be wasting them if they really can afford not to. But it's led to a lot of problems with local people potentially not being properly identified.
Anything else you want to show us there, Thomas?
I do have stuff internationally, worldwide. I also have statistics for your neck of the woods, Nathan, actually. 590 cases in the United Kingdom.
Now, this is
so
interesting
far.
because, they were talking, the Prime Minister and some of his aides or advisors in a press conference earlier today. Two things were interesting about that press conference. One of them is that the UK is not planning to do anything particularly strict anytime soon. They have advised people to, if they have symptoms of a cough or a fever, to isolate themselves for 7 days, and for anyone over the age of 70 to not go on cruise ships. What they also said was they sort of had the reasoning for it. They've been looking into the science as well. Interestingly, different to what most other countries are doing, but they say that the reason that they're holding out before closing everything is because they feel that psychologically the behavior wouldn't be correct. For instance, if people are being told to isolate themselves for months, they just wouldn't do it. So what they're trying to say is that they're going to do it when it gets much worse.
That sounds like maybe not the best approach, but we'll see. I mean, the inevitability at this point that it seems like the world is accepting is that this will get much worse. The problem is we don't know how much worse. We don't know the death rate. We don't know how fast it's spreading. There are a lot of unknowns, and I think that this is much of the reason why the stock market is tanking. Supply lines are being disrupted. The global economy has come to a screeching halt. And the fact that we had a lot of instability in the European economy before that, and the fact that Syria and Russia decided to go on an oil price tirade, probably didn't help the situation.
Yeah. What I will say is interesting with that strategy is it's almost like it's not attempting contain. You know, there's two strategies with the virus. Like there's containment and there's mitigation. If I'm hearing what you said right, that the UK's approach is almost just to ignore containment to some extent. I'm also confused as to why their isolation thing is 7 days, considering that the guideline is 14 days as well.
Yeah, it is getting a little bit confusing, isn't it? Now, a lot of people are doing it. Well, no. What they are saying is that to self-isolate for 7 days if you have symptoms of any kind of cough or new cough or a fever. But if it's what they were saying is if it's bad enough that you would call up or speak to a health professional about the illness, then you're requested to call the number 111 here in the UK, the non-emergency line, and they will probably end up advising you to contain yourself for 14 days.
Yeah. It is interesting to see the differing levels of what each country is doing. I was also kind of interested because the travel ban put in by the United States yesterday that's in effect in under 3 hours now, actually.
Yeah.
Excluded the UK. I think it was the Schengen zone or Schengen zone. I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation of that. But I was pretty
am I
curious
right in
as
saying
to
Ireland is also exempt from that?
Ireland's also excluded. I was kind of confused at that, particularly the UK, considering the UK has one of the largest total case counts for a country in Europe. I was kind of confused by that. But I will say, out of Americans
possibly,
in Europe, there's
I mean,
definitely been
at the moment it's nowhere near. Spain is
Not
now
Italy
over
yet.
3,000, Germany 2,500, France 2,500. We're going to see the numbers properly in just a few minutes. But also, what they were saying, we'll just finish up on this before we go to a break. They did say that they're probably undercounting the cases by a lot. They actually said that the total number in the UK right now could be 5 to 10,000. So that's quite interesting, and it's interesting to wonder whether if all of the countries are undercounting by that much.
I mean, it's hard to say because, there definitely are asymptomatic cases or cases so mild that you might not even presume that you might have it. That's why there's some people trying to say that the overall death rate of the disease might end up being lower than, the current, depends on which number you're using. Of active cases, it's like 3.6% right now of closed cases. So, cases that have had a death or a recovery, it's like about 6.3% right now, but both of those numbers are changing constantly. But we don't necessarily know if there's just tons of asymptomatic carriers out there as well that just might not be showing symptoms or showing symptoms so weakly, like maybe just barely a sniffle, that they might not even assume that it could be something else.
We're going to take a short break on this. You'll see all the numbers around the globe shortly. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stay tuned. This is Force 13 Live. During this special coverage, we'd like to hear from you and the situation in your area. Send images, video or audio recordings to contact@force13.com and we'll put them to air. Just some of the numbers there. This is Force 13 Live. Latest on the coronavirus, and this is what we will be covering regularly now. Every evening around the same time, we're looking towards at least in the future. You're joining us live again. Send in your messages. We'll probably get some of them towards the end of our stream tonight, running for an hour at this point. We don't really make any apology for running this stream. It's been identified as something that's really so large at this point that even though it's not what we typically do, of course, Force 13 generally covering the weather scene, tropical meteorology and the like, hurricanes, but obviously this is a area of particular interest that has really dwarfed any other natural disaster in this century, I suppose, so far, by quite some distance, at least in terms of how much interest it is gathering. So we feel that it's necessary for us to do our bit here and to maybe, to put the right information out there, obviously, and maybe, hopefully, help people out. And if there's anything that we can debunk perhaps on the air as well, that might be of interest too. Joining me again is the team for the rest of this hour, and they're doing a great job so far, joined by Strat, David, Parker and Thomas. Hello again. What are we looking at now?
So what you're looking at here is it's a chart. I'm not sure how well you can see it on Nathan's end of things,
Pretty
but
well.
it's really a chart of just total cases, new cases. It's basically also the statistics you'd ever want to see for the coronavirus.
Yeah, we've displayed a lot of them just now, to be honest.
This is one of the most up-to-date sources, actually. It's actually even more up-to-date usually than the Johns Hopkins University source, which is a very large interactive map. I'll actually probably add that to the description of the stream shortly for people to access themselves. Whose numbers right now, that thing you showed is, I think, it's over a day behind.
They are quite behind.
Yes, this is the most immediate one. It takes a very large pull from the governmental sources and also news reports that are verifying out as well.
We have shown most of those numbers, to be honest, just now.
Big thing is new deaths today. Especially in Italy, we're having lots of new deaths.
And it's always a trouble whether this is a delay in reporting or whether this has all happened in the last 24 hours.
There was actually reports yesterday that there was delays of reporting things in Lombardy because of how Lombardy is a province in Italy because of how bad the situation has been getting.
That is true.
Yeah,
I heard about that too.
There is it's just a catastrophe in Italy.
We could stare at the numbers for a long time, but Thomas, I think you've also got some of the advice that they're putting out as well. The World Health Organization have all sorts of resources, and they're putting out there.
Yeah, they have a lot of things, so we can just go through all of them. Biggest things that they're really driving home: wash your hands frequently. Disinfect surfaces that you commonly touch or other people touch, and stay home. Stay home. Just if you can, do not travel. Especially if you're going to Asia or Europe, unless it is absolutely essential. Cancel your plans for that. If it's in the immediate future, the World Health Organization is really just recommending, again, wash your hands thoroughly, frequently, and stay home. If you stay home and you make sure that you're in a sanitary place, the odds of you getting the coronavirus are relatively low. And that's what they're wanting. So those are the big things. Do we want to talk about the event cancellations that have occurred over the past 24 to 48 hours?
Yeah, there's all sorts of things that have happened very recently.
Yeah, there's been a gargantuan amount of just cascading, in particular sports cancellations in the past 24 hours since I think it was Rudy Gobert, a Utah Jazz player in the NBA,
Yeah.
tested positive for COVID-19. I think it was Monday, so 3 days ago he had said that he was, that it was overblown and like went around and like touched the microphones all over the
Yeah, I read
place
about that.
at the area. And then it was a pretty dramatic scene, actually, how things really got underway with the NBA. The game was about to tip off, and a doctor had run out onto the court to tell them to call off the game because he had tested positive. So, many people. So his whole team, the Jazz, are all under isolation, all are tested and stuff.
Yeah.
I think a second one's already tested positive. And the NBA quickly, within a couple hours, said that after tonight, the operations for the season are suspended indefinitely. And then since then, in the past 24 hours since that, the MLB, so baseball, the NHL, hockey, and
All major
March
sports
Madness
in the United
all
States.
called out. Yeah, the only major sport, I guess you could say, the only professional large-scale sport that has multi-million viewers per event that hasn't been canceled yet is the XFL, actually.
Actually, Strat, they just canceled their season.
Are you
Not too
serious?
long ago. Yep, 41 minutes ago. League is committed to playing full season 2020. Well, future years, all players would be paid base pay for 2020. Except they canceled the regular season just 41 minutes ago.
They just, well, there you go. All sports are gone, basically.
And elsewhere,
Um,
the Australian Grand Prix is being called off as well, David. I'm sure you're right on that one. They've been talking about that a lot too.
Yes. And Nathan, the leader of the federal opposition has this morning, within the last couple of hours, sent a letter off to the Australian Prime Minister requesting the urgent call of the federal parliament to kickstart or get the legislation in pass for the 22 billion package that has been announced. And Nathan, Belgium school trips banned, staggered travel times to work, mass gatherings banned,
Yeah,
working
Belgium
from
have
home advised.
banned all kinds of things today.
And Germany, I've got just reading a news item, mass gatherings banned, support for businesses with reduced working hours and wages, state concert halls and theatres closed in Berlin.
All across Europe at the minute as well, yeah.
And now, so in America as well, individual organizations and groups, companies are trying very hard to act in containment measures by limiting social contact. Broadway was actually canceled. They shut down Broadway too.
One of the museums there in New York as
St.
well.
Patrick's Day parade was canceled. In New York, they actually banned public gatherings of more than 500 people in New York City, which, for a city of 9 million people within a very small relative area is very significant.
And all public tours in DC are gone as well.
Yep, South by Southwest was canceled, Coachella was canceled, E3 was canceled, absolute ton. I think some of that concern, it's warranted because Mardi Gras has had multiple confirmed cases out of people that travel to Mardi Gras in different states, as Nelson mentioned now. And Mardi Gras was a while ago as well, so that means that these cases were, people that were infected prior that had gone under the radar.
And they're
closing
that's
down
one
of the main
Disneyland
concerns
as well, California.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if Disney World wasn't too far behind at this point either. Just because most amusement parks, at least in the interim, next 2 to 3 months, are definitely gonna have a problem. It's hard to say for once you get to the northeast and northern part of the country, those are mainly seasonal parks and stuff, if they'll see the same impacts if this is very prolonged. But that's also something to keep an eye out on as well.
as we look at all these messages from the World Health Organization going by there as well, which we ought to throw attention on there as well, Thomas?
Yeah, so these are all the World Health Organization has gone into overdrive when it comes to messaging. I've just been finding nonstop all kinds of messages
To
from
be
the
fair,
World
they've
Health.
had about 3 months to prepare for this.
This is true, but it's still
There is a lot
really,
of stuff there.
there is an awful lot of stuff. Yeah, they're really talking about safety. They're talking about basically using common sense, but something that they're really driving home that is something that was kind of unexpected, but I guess warranted is for everyone to be kind to each other. It's something that certainly hasn't.
Well, I think that's because
Yep.
it'll be very easy for people to, well, you know, people are going to be people who get the virus. You know, it's going to be instant avoid, isn't it? You know, it's difficult to. It'll be difficult to maintain contact. Obviously, you know, physically, definitely not.
Yeah.
So people need to be checked up upon, and obviously those who are vulnerable as well need to be
Yeah, and I
checked
think
up upon regularly.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is also to try to work to prevent social stigma, because globally, you know, definitely seen stories from America. There was a lot of negative sentiment created against, you know, people from China and Asia
Yeah.
in general at
Mhm.
first, and it's
At
still,
first, yeah.
you know, and that's still it still exists now, despite the fact that over 95% of the cases aren't occurring in China, or
Well, they're only getting a few dozen a day now.
yeah, yeah, I think they're getting
They've
like less
only
than two
gotten
dozen a
3
day at
today.
points.
They've
Yeah, which
gotten
is
3 today.
insane. But there's still a lot of negative stigma because people, you know, might see the initial news of where it started, and you know, it certainly doesn't help when you have, you know, certain politicians and authority figures calling it the Chinese or Wuhan coronavirus at this point, when it's, you know, a much more international spectrum event, really.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, I mean,
I think
a
it's
virus
human
doesn't
nature.
discriminate.
I think that
It is
it's
human nature.
People
It is human
throw a
nature.
label on things as quickly as they can.
But that label,
Exactly.
especially when it's a, you know, it's a worldwide thing,
It
is
is.
gonna definitely create, you know, negative attention to certain groups of people that don't
Yeah,
deserve it. It's
totally
important to
unfair.
point out that
we can.
a virus like this isn't going to discriminate based on, you know, age, gender, race,
Absolutely.
ethnicity, religion, whatever. You know, we've already seen that. It's reached all corners of the globe. The only place it really hasn't reached is Antarctica at this point. And, you know,
Well, there's a lot of
for all we
Pacific
know, that could
islands that
somehow
still
still
don't have
happen.
it. There are,
Yeah.
Big,
I mean, there are still about 70 countries that don't have the virus yet.
Yeah. Big thing with the xenophobic sentiments. Something that does seem to be argued a lot is I've heard a lot about this sentiment. I do believe it exists. I do disagree that calling it the Wuhan virus is a negative thing to do. Mostly because we've had things like the Spanish flu in the past, things of that nature. I don't think that anyone
Well, the
has
Spanish
something
flu wasn't actually
panic.
called the Spanish flu because it originated there. It was actually called that
Mhm.
because the
Yeah.
press there, because they were neutral in the First World War, was allowed to freely report about it easily. That's actually how it got
We're
its
sort
coin
of going
name.
off topic a little bit here.
A little bit, yeah.
Nathan, I've got an update over here.
Sure.
The Australian Prime Minister is now being criticised for he's planning to attend a football match on Saturday. However, 1.5 million could be infected by this virus in New South Wales alone. And we have 163 cases that are confirmed, 78 New South Wales, 27 in Victoria, 31 in Queensland with 4 detected overnight, 12 in South Australia, 9 in Western Australia, 4, the fourth one was confirmed about 5 hours ago, 1 in the Northern Territory, 1 in the ACT. 3 people have died, 95, 82, 78.
Okay then, we're going to take a short break at this point. We'll be back again in a few moments. This is Force 13 Live. We'll take more of your questions after this. Type it in chat. We will continue to run regular updates on this feature. Send us a message on social media if you wish to be involved in our coverage or to join us on our panel nightly. Send us a message through Facebook, Twitter, or our contact email address, contact@force13.com. This is Force 13 Live. We're back here in the studio once again into the final segment of our stream tonight. The first of what may end up being very many regular streams here on what we're branding CoronaBeat. A spin-off from our Weather Beat to talk about the latest in developments with the coronavirus. We've discussed most of the aspects of it tonight so far. If you think we've missed anything, please send in any questions and please your reports as well from your local area and regionally as well. We want to hear from you about all of that because the more we know, the better we can inform everyone. It's, you know, no matter what the event is, that is always the motto, I suppose. Let's go back to, well, there's the screen share once again about staying healthy whilst traveling, and a lot of people will still be traveling. It will be business as usual for a lot of people still at this point.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. This is actually an important thing. We were talking about Disney World earlier. Disney World is closing at the end of this weekend, actually, indefinitely.
Okay.
Wow, so not just
And
that's
Disneyland,
another
but
big
also
event as
Disney
well.
World. Wow.
And
Other news
Disneyland
items.
Paris. So, amusement parks are really shutting down over this.
David?
Oh, certainly.
Anzac Day is now in jeopardy.
Wow.
Right.
With the marches, parades. So there's a bit of a cloud over whether the historic event will be held this year.
A lot of historic events under
Yes.
the microscope right now as well. Did we have any comments that came in?
Someone asked how many cases were in Texas. I think the last confirmed number that I saw was 27 in the state of Texas. So most of them, I think 18 or 19 of them are in the city of Austin itself. So most of them are in the same area. If you're talking about other cities nearby, New Orleans has like 17.
Right.
Cities that are really starting to see big case counts are Seattle,
Of course.
LA, and San Francisco,
Let's,
Boston, and New York City.
Move over to Parker's screen because he's showing us some stuff right now.
Yeah, so you see right here on see right there is the hand hygiene process. The purple shows where you should wash your hands. Sometimes where it will be and green shows where it's frequently missed. So the frequently missed areas is usually as you see on the front of your hand, which is right here. You see there's these little spots right here that will be missed in between the fingers and right here in between the thumb
Well, it's
and
common
pointer
sense,
finger.
isn't it?
Yeah, and then what you don't normally see or think about was that it'd be right here on this point. You would see right there, That is another place on the palm of your hand where that is where you miss. Now on the front of your hand, as you see right here, but some people tend to forget will be this area right here on the edge of your thumb. As you see, where it air frequently missed the back of your hand will be a majority of your hand going all the way until some in the middle of the finger and right, ending all the way over here.
All right.
This may look very weird, but this was actually from the CDC from a long time ago. They
Yeah.
usually update, and this is their latest update from I think December. But as you see, this is some areas where it's frequently missed. Tip of the fingers. Sorry, my bad. Tip of the fingers. Even under some of the fingernails and fingers and all of that. Now, looking at the image on your left, this is actually an image that my sister sent in to me, and
Yeah.
she was down in Myers in Tennessee, and as you can see, they had shopping lines of 10 carts full, and it took her an hour and 30 to get through this whole line because people were stocking up on toilet paper, food, essential items, I guess, that you would need for an outbreak. But yes, this is sent from my sister. It's getting pretty crazy. People are starting to buy up on food or for all sort of stuff. So, but yep, that is so far what I've received, and take it back.
Thanks very much for that. Let's go. What's Thomas is still showing us some of those messages. Who wants to pick it up next?
Yeah, I was gonna say, just with hand washing, I know we're all told as children, make sure to wash your hand for 20 seconds and stuff. The length of 2 birthday songs or something like that. Um, it is important to note that I'm pretty sure everyone, not only in this call, but everyone watching right now, can probably say with utmost certainty that during their life they have not 100% lived to that. And probably very rarely. Most of the time people wash their hands, they do a quick 2-second rinse or something.
Oh yeah.
So it's important to articulate that washing your hands, is probably the best preventative measure, and proper hygiene is the best preventative measure to protect yourself from the virus. Even if your individual risk may be low, the risk to individual communities and countries as a whole have obviously quickly risen at a pretty significant level. So making sure you perform proper etiquette not only is going to protect yourself, but especially for young people that may not be as adversely impacted from it, you're protecting yourself from becoming a carrier to potentially infect more vulnerable people. This virus is very weak in terms of the death percentage to young people, but is extremely aggressive to older people. Its death rate of people above 80 is, I think it's 14% plus or something
like that.
that
Yeah.
I last saw. I'm pretty sure we can verify that in the future as well.
One
But
in 7.
older populations and immunosuppressant populations, so young people that may have suppressed immune systems due to pre-existing conditions, are extremely vulnerable. So doing your
Nathan?
job to protect the community in this situation is also very important.
Thank you, David.
Do we have the stats on the virus in Italy?
Yeah, I do have those stats.
Yeah.
Could
So,
you just highlight them again? Got an update.
yeah, so we currently have, as of now, I'm going to refresh the page. Currently, 15,113 cases are in Italy. As of now, there have been about 1,000 deaths, about 1,200 recoveries. Although the death to recovery rate is about 50-50, we do have to remember we have about 12,000 active cases. Only 9% of people that currently have it are in critical condition. 11,000 of those people are still in good condition. So around 11,000 out of 12,000 still in good condition.
Italy is it's major 2,651.
That's right.
Cases last 24 hours.
And that is the highest increase in a 24-hour period so far.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if this was verified today as well, but there was reporting issues yesterday coming out of the Lombardy region, which is the hardest hit area, which includes Milan, because of how severe the situation's gotten. I think this is a concern in China. It can definitely be a concern in Italy and potentially other European and even America when the time comes in terms of countrywide issues, is that the systems may get so overwhelmed with new cases that they're not able to accurately record everyone down, and that's going to make reporting and then tracking, and then mitigation efforts, which involve contact tracing, much more difficult when resources are stretched so thin, which is why containment measures in local communities and widespread mitigation efforts, like staying informed, are extremely important in this situation. I think Italy
And
itself
that,
presents another issue in general in terms of just tracking the evolution of this because their death rate being significantly higher than the total active case amount right now. It's a conundrum of seeing. It just shows that there's a lot of unknowns at this point. You can use a potential projected rate of 1%. You can use out of the active cases, which is like 3.6%, or you can use the closed case amount, so cases that have had a recovery or death, which is over 6%. There's still an extreme amount of things that we don't know,
That's
which
gone
is
up to
why staying
7%.
informed and keeping up to date on the latest information is very important.
and I've got an update via CBS for Miami. Disney World hotels will remain open until further notice. All cast members will be paid during the closure, but a downside is that Disney is suspending all departures with Disney Cruise starting Saturday through to the end of the month.
And a lot of things are closing down until either the end of March or the beginning of April. Some of them are even later than that. And I think really people are just going to wait and see what happens in the intervening days and weeks as to whether, well, they'll make a call further down the line whether to extend that delay or not. I think it's just some kind of arbitrary thing that a lot of people have done.
You can kind of see that with universities. There's a lot of arbitrage in terms of their policies. For example, my university, Bentley, only made their call today to move online officially, although it was anticipated, but is only planning to do so until April 3rd at the moment. And on top of that, it's move out schedule. So students, unless you have prior special permission, are required to be out of the university. You got to go get your things and be out by this upcoming Tuesday. So we're on a pretty strict time limit here. While other places like American University, my twin sister's school, is online for the rest of the semester. So for at least the next 2 months at this point, are going to be online. And if I'm not mistaken, from what I'm seeing from my sister and other people in communication with the school, they aren't allowed back on campus, is what I heard. At least in some locations at this point already.
We're just about to finish
there's a lot
here
of
now,
arbitrage.
Strat. Just a quick one for you guys. How are we actually feeling ourselves about this event that's currently ongoing?
Really, it's worrying, but at the same time, if you keep on washing your hands and keep a good healthy hygiene, your chances of getting the virus are significantly low. So if you keep a good hygiene and wash your hands correct way, all that, your chance of getting the virus will be very low. Now, doesn't mean you will get the virus or won't, but anyways, I feel worried, but at the same time, I feel pretty safe with how my hygiene's been going and keeping all that stuff clean, yada yada, yeah. So
yeah, I think the best way to explain it is that it's something to be concerned about and worried about and staying informed about, because it is something that could potentially get bad for many people around the world. But it's also something not to panic about and create, doomsday newsletters about, like we saw in
There's so
2012
much of
with
it
the
going
Mayan
on.
calendar. Your individual
The
risk.
horse has bolted on that one, Strat. People are going mad.
I know, but I'm saying, to people watching this and people who be watching future coverage, is relatively you stay individually, calm with it. Get some basic supplies if you feel you need them, but your individual risk of getting sick, and then furthermore, depending on your demographic, really, of getting seriously ill, is still very low. But the main concern is protecting your community and your family and your loved ones, which is why this is becoming much more of an international concern. So the best steps at this point are to act in containment efforts. So social isolation is important, but not to panic and say this is the end of the world. Just because the stock market has gone off a cliff, for example, doesn't mean the world is ending. there's a lot more to things going on right now than
And
just
that's
that.
coming from Strat. My goodness.
Look, I mean, it's simple as this: people's lives matter more than a couple numbers flashing across the screen
Totally.
that show what people believe the value of a company are. And I think that's an important message that everyone should understand as a basic fact at this point.
All right. Anyone else, briefly?
Yeah, just I mean, the situation is definitely concerning. There are a lot of unknowns. Actions that are being taken right now wouldn't be taken if this wasn't a concerning thing. My biggest advice: do not panic about this, but do not wave it off. This is something that shouldn't be scoffed. Panicking isn't going to do any good, but definitely take this seriously. Take what health officials are saying seriously. Don't think that since you're just one person, you're exempt from the rules. Like it can't happen to me, it can happen to you. You could get this virus, and while it may not be concerning to you, you may not be at high risk. I guarantee you have people that that are much older than you, that may have pre-existing conditions that are at higher risk, and to expose those people would be very, very bad news for them. So just be aware of that.
Thanks, guys, for your help with us here in the last hour. This was Force 13 Live special, covering the latest on the coronavirus. We felt it was necessary to start this kind of coverage on our channel at this point, given the gravity of the worldwide situation. I think it would be somewhat irresponsible not to begin the coverage on Force 13. But that's it from us tonight. We'll have more about this at the same time tomorrow night at midnight UTC, just as we enter the 14th of March on the Universal Clock, Greenwich time. That would be 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and I think 8 a.m. over in the Philippines and in China, Japan, 8 or 9 hours ahead. That's all from us tonight. We'll see you again soon. Stay safe out there, and of course, follow the advice issued by your local officials and health professionals. Good night.